All right. Let me just pull up the agenda. All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the April 26th meeting of the USD Facilities Subcommittee. Let's see. I'll call the meeting to order. Julie, do you want to move to approve the agenda? Did you say yes? Oh, yes. Okay. I will second that. So the
Yes,
agenda.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. I could at least read your lips to that extent. Just looking at something real quick. Okay. Sorry about that. Julie, do you want to move to approve the minutes from our March 3rd meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second that. Those meetings are approved. Okay, if you're if you're here for public comment, now it's time for public comment. If you're here for public comment, raise your Zoom hand. I see Rana, Bea. I see three people, and Mati with their Zoom hands raised. So public, let me just make sure no one else is coming. I see. Liza, let's go. If you're here for public comment, if you could raise your hand. If not, that's fine. Okay, you are. Okay, we only have an hour for the meeting and a fair amount to present. So each person will have 2 minutes for public comment. These 4 people, we'll just do it in the order that they're here. And Carol, if you don't mind, I guess you got it. Okay. I'll keep time, and if you all could do your best to stick to 2 minutes, that will enable us to get through, to hear what you have to say and get through our meeting today. Rana, go ahead.
Hi, this is Ronald Cho. I am PTA president at Emerson Elementary School, and I have been before this group of people before, and I'm bringing up a similar comment. It is to request transparency and community engagement in the project prioritization of Bond Measure G. Specifically, upon John Calise's recommendation at the CBOC meeting recently, I would like to formally request a community engagement workshop with this committee. As Director Calise said, this was the most efficient way for us to be voicing our concerns over the recently approved tennis parking structure. I am here again because I was heartened to see the recent Berkeley side article by Ali Markovich. In the comments, you can see that most of the community members agree with us in that this project needs to be reevaluated in terms of priorities, especially when considering the greater Berkeley community. So again, the things that I've been asking for consistently, I've reached out to some of the board members individually as well, and they asked me to go up the chain of command, and here I am. And the chain of command has said, work with a community engagement workshop. We do plan on raising this issue of transparency and project prioritization with the upcoming school board elections and candidates, as well as the incoming superintendent. And we would like more engagement and transparency. We still don't understand how several elementary schools who lack updated HVAC systems
Thank you.
Has not been prioritized.
Thanks so much. Next would be Bea Sheridan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bea Sheridan, former PTA president Malcolm X, parent of 2 kids in the Berkeley system. I'm here with the rest of the crowd, basically just wanting some more understanding of how we can give our input on prioritization. I'm not going to be as eloquent as Rana or Liza, but I feel that as a prioritization, I'd rather not have my tax dollars pay for car parking compared to what seems to be a recurring theme of hot, smoky weather in our schools along with COVID. So I would love to see, and it doesn't have to necessarily be either or. Maybe Liza can speak to the problems of having the facilities located on Milvia Street in regards to the bicycle boulevard and curb cuts and so forth. But I really kind of would like to see more money spent towards the health of our students and teachers as far as green improvements at the schools. Thank you so much. I'm done with my time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Matty Tablum, followed by Liza Letzker. Go ahead. Matty.
Okay, can you hear me
There you
now?
go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me the possibility to speak here. I'm continuing or trying to continue the conversation. I hope it can continue to be a conversation, an inquiry into and understanding the decision-making process that led to the approval of the parking structure. I intentionally remove the addition of tennis on it because it seems to be minor. The parking structure, and then fast forward to the recent month or two, the facilities addition on that same project. Just to, I think, to have clarity in the conversation, I think the fact that the parking structure was approved a couple of years ago, at this point, with the addition of the facilities feature on that same project, makes that a new project, and it should be regarded as such. I think continue the discussion as if that was already approved, and hence we do not need to even go back and think about it. I think it's a distortion of the reality. This is a new project now. Too much has changed in order to call it an addition to that old project. I sent all the questions that I had to, that I wanted to inquire. I'm hoping to get information because I believe that
15 seconds, Matty. Go ahead.
Okay, it seems like in the slide that Mr. Kaliz will show that you have gone through the motion. I cannot see the data behind the motions. Just one footnote, the minutes were not available as of last night, and therefore I don't believe that you can actually approve them or ratify them tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Hi, everyone.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, you can hear me.
I can,
hi,
yeah,
so
go ahead.
I'm Liza Letzker. I'm a parent of 2 USD kids, and I'm a coordinating committee member of Walk Bike Berkeley. I'm here to also talk to you about the Milvia Street project, and totally agree with the last speaker that when voters approved this specific project, it was a very different project, and it was very different in 3 respects. It was different with respect to the climate impact, it was different with respect to the safety impact, and it was different with respect to the cost. And just to speak to that, this is a project where you are building 240 plus spots of car storage, storage for $25 million in the most transit-rich area in the entire city without having done any sort of assessment of transit alternatives for staff. This is something we've been asking BUSD to do for a long time, to actually figure out which staff could get there through other means and provide them incentives to do so. This is coming from the same department as the sustainability effort, which is just kind of ridiculous. This is going to cause huge safety issues on what is the most heavily trafficked bike boulevard in the entire city. This has been a 40-year project. And just so you know, there will be no entrance on Milvia. The city has been very clear that there will be no entrance or curb cuts or loading docks on Milvia. There will be no driving of trucks on Milvia. This is totally different than 130 spots and a tennis court. And I just want to say, in terms of cost, I think y'all are fooling yourself if you think it's a $25 million project. Estimates for underground parking are $80,000 per spot. That takes you to almost $20 million for the underground structure alone. That doesn't count any of the receiving facilities, any of anything, and any of the projects that you'll need to be doing that will have to meet the EIR. You will need to create a transportation demand management program. You'll need to hire consultants to do so. You're going to need to make bike and safety mitigations in the area. So this is not the same project, and I urge you to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly 2 minutes. Thank you, Liza. All right. Thank you all for the public comment. And now we will move right into the Measure G update. So I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Calise.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so this is just an update on the implementation plan, which we've made public with the board a few times, but it also seemed like the right time to actually talk about how projects come about. So what we're going to talk about real briefly is how projects are conceptualized, planned, discussed, and considered for approval, the timeline that's associated with that, but also the different opportunities where there is public engagement and public conversation, show the process for the board to consider and approve additional projects and funding of allocations, how we currently do that. We've reformatted the implementation plan. The implementation tracking log that we use, it is complex, and it doesn't necessarily show on one sheet the different funding, whether it be Measure I or Measure G, or if it's Fund 40 or developer fees. So we've incorporated that just as an even greater extent of transparency for folks so that they don't have to go back and actually look at prior board approvals to see how it's being funded. And we're going to go over that. And then obviously we're going to continue to track planned projects, both Board of Education approved and planned for the future. And what that means is that we have the implementation plan, and as you'll see on the implementation plan, what we show is in progress, meaning we've taken that specific project to the board, or it's TBD, meaning it's being planned, but it hasn't gone to the board yet to actually kick off the project because it's a few years out. And then we continue to return to the board to update the trustees and seek approval for future projects. So since this is a topic of conversation, the plan that we chose to show, or the project that we chose to show as an example of the process that it went through, is the parking structure with the tennis courts on top. So this actually dates back over a decade. My predecessor, Tim White, worked on this as well. But really, since I've been here, this has been the process, which is in June of 18, the board authorized HY Architects to develop a facilities needs assessment and master plan. That same month, the master planning consultant HY began that, and they first began to develop a facilities needs assessment, which is really looking at every square inch of every building, every system, mechanical system, building envelope, et cetera, to determine what the facilities needs are. That took place from September through November. At the same time, July of 18 to January of 19, the superintendent had convened a superintendent work group. This is actually when I joined the district. I came in on the tail end. But meetings were held to discuss the future capital improvement projects, the facilities needs assessment, understand the bonding capacity and the cost, which is incredibly important, but it's also rather complex, to develop the project list with the master planning consultant. On November 6th of 2019, I gave a presentation to the board, and we discussed the facilities needs of the district and the potential project list for a future general obligation bond. On November 20th, we revisited the board and we gave the same presentation, and there was discussion. And the governing board unanimously voted to approve the Measure G ballot language, the project list, the capital planning budget, and the marquee projects. Now, the next slide actually shows a slide from 2019 with the marquee projects that were all listed. And the third bullet on here is that very project, the parking lot with the tennis courts above. Following that, in March of 20, on election day, the voters turned out and Measure G passed with 80.52%. In June of 20, the governing board discussed and approved a Measure G partial implementation plan, and that included several of the marquee projects as well as the smaller projects. June 23rd of the following year, the governing board discussed and took action to approve the updated partial. We updated it some more with some additional project, that implementation plan, and the tennis courts with parking structure were still listed. In December of 20, which isn't listed here, we realized that we had to close plant ops. So on March 3rd of 2022, after several months of planning, Facilities Subcommittee heard a conversation, and we actually had some public comment, as I recall, regarding the relocation of plant ops and the 4 options that the Facilities Department looked at. Following that, it went to the board on March 9th as an information and discussion item. We discussed what those options were, the costs associated with each option, and the recommendation. And the recommendation was actually to incorporate it into the BHS tennis parking structure. On March 23rd, the governing board took action to approve that. So we've had a long period of public engagement and opportunity to discuss that, and that's just what my intent was to show here. So moving forward with the Measure G implementation plan, this here is all of the previously approved projects by the board that have been approved so far for Measure G, and the funding that's associated with each one. There's additional proposals going to the board actually at this coming meeting, and those are highlighted in yellow on the same sheet. What you saw on the page before was just a clip of that sheet. And we're constantly going through exercises of value engineering, as well as trying to really spread the dollars as far as we can. So Sylvia Mendez is a great example. Sylvia Mendez was initially authorized back when we authorized all of the marquee projects in 20 as a $36 million modernization. In that implementation plan, there was also about $16.5 million set aside for solar as well as all the infrastructure. Going through the exercises, the design exercises, as well as the value engineering, it's been recognized that there's a $4 million savings on this bond, or on these bond dollars, if we incorporate the solar and the infrastructure all to part of this modernization. And it's not that we modernize and come back to deal with systems later. The district-wide solar and sustainability, what that is that's actually just a correction of $7 million. The board has already authorized several solar projects. That initial 31 million was just the lump sum for all of the sites together. And when we authorized those 3 individual sites, what we didn't do was we made an error and didn't show the deduction. So we're showing that here. Longfellow Middle School, we value engineered this over 4 months. And basically where we came in at the board, and subcommittee has talked about this at great length, where that project grew to over 30 million because it turned into some small work being done to a full modernization. We're just showing that that's being updated, and the total budget for that project is 33 million. Hopkins was definitely an error made by the consultant, I would say, in the facilities needs assessment, as there was originally $951,000 set aside for infrastructure on that. And when we walked it, one of the first things we noticed was all the accessibility issues throughout that site. So we're allocating an additional $1 million to increase that project budget so that we can deal with those ADA issues, deal with the systems and infrastructure issues, and bring the site up in compliance. The last 3 projects are very small dollar amounts, but they are projects nonetheless. We need to replace the PA system, all the head end equipment over at Malcolm X. We need to do an upgrade to the PA that we've done at Berkeley High. Berkeley High, we've already replaced the head end equipment. But one of the things that we learned was that in the initial design of Berkeley High, there was a myriad of offices and not classroom spaces, but rooms that are used that were never equipped with speakers. So in the event of a lockdown or things like that, they don't know about it. We're addressing that. And then over the summer, we'll be painting King Middle School, and that's part of the King Middle School media building. And that's part of the infrastructure dollars that's set aside to protect the building envelope. So the updated implementation plan, what I was talking about earlier about what we're changing, and this is really just to it's to create even greater transparency, but also to really simplify for folks to be able to read this and understand the plan. This is just a shot of it as a whole, but if we dig in a little bit, what we'll see is as we work across, it'll either show as in progress or pending. In progress means it's already under contract, we've encumbered and we're expensing dollars on this project. And pending means that it's a project that's in the planning stage. It's one of the projects that the board said we're going to do. We haven't got to start the planning phase yet. Remember, the life of this bond is expected to really go between 10 and 13 years for all of the construction. What we've shown here is either an estimated design start or an estimated construction completion, depending upon which project it is. We've shown the current approval if it's in progress, or the proposed allocation if it's something that's pending. The next set of columns came at a request where, and this is what I spoke about before, oftentimes there's confusion now where folks are wanting to know, how are we paying for this? And while we can say the bond, the question comes up is it Measure I or is it Measure G? Are we paying for this out of developer fees? Are we are we getting state funding for this project? Or is it Fund 40, which is it's sort of like, just called a typo, sorry, it says OFB, it's OBF, which is a program that we're doing with PG&E. These next three sheets just run through the list of the projects that were put into Measure G in that project list that we brought to the board back in November of 19. And then at the bottom, what it shows is the total general obligation bond, the interest on that bond, anticipated state funding, which I will say is low, but that was very intentional to put that low. We would rather figure that than overextend ourselves. State funding on the Little Theater, what that is in regards to is the Little Theater seismic upgrades was listed as a marquee project. The state architect has since said that if we're going to do the Little Theater, they will now require us to do the entire house. What we're seeing is that house is going to cost roughly $30 million to do the mandatory seismic upgrade, but we will actually qualify for state funding under the seismic mitigation program. So what we're showing there is that 26 million, and the 51, I'm sorry, I said 30, the 51 is a combination of the house as well as the alterations that we would have to make to the Little Theater with the fact that we're doing this now as a mandatory seismic upgrade. State funding for CTE is shown, and then developer fees, again, those are and OBF, those are underestimated intentionally because we don't want to count on dollars that we don't have from the state. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will take any questions.
Thanks, John. Can you just tell me for the Sylvia Mendez, for the next two items, Sylvia Mendez modernization update, and then the discussion of upcoming board items, how much time those are going to take, do you think?
I'm sorry, Ty, can you say that again? I apologize, you broke up.
How much time do you think the next two items on the agenda are going to take? The Sylvia Mendez and then the discussion of upcoming board items. I just want to have a sense of how much time we have to spend on this.
Probably 20 to 25 minutes max, but I think 20 would be the Sylvia Mendez is a rather quick, it's an overview of the SDs and some changes we've made. And then the upcoming items is 5 minutes.
Okay, well, just so we have a few minutes on this, but just to keep in mind that we're supposed to stop at 6. Julie, do you have comments?
Yeah, a couple of comments. Whoops, and a question. I want to acknowledge, based on the public comment as well, that the parking lot and the tennis courts have been in conversation for a very long time, and acknowledge that the plant ops has not been in conversation for a very long time. And that was due to the urgency of the finding in December and then needing to find an alternative quickly. And I guess the question I have, John, is, and I apologize if this was in the previous notes, but I didn't go back and look, is when you gave us the matrix of the price comparisons, I don't remember if you gave us background on where those price comparisons came from. But I think it would be helpful to know, because I know it would, the thing about the Milvia site was that the addition into the parking structure was significantly less millions than it was if we were to demolish Oregon Street and rebuild or try to do something at Gilman. But I don't remember if you actually gave us the background for those projections. And I think if you have them, it would be helpful to share. I just can't remember if they were in the packet or not.
Yeah, I don't, and I'm sorry, I don't recall either, but I know that was definitely discussed at one point, but I don't remember where. Those numbers came from internal ROMs that were developed between this office as well as Van Pelt, and this is what we do. And then the parking structure numbers, those actually came not only from us, but those were actually validated by Watchery Design, and Watchery Design is a parking lot designer. That's what they do, and they're the ones who are doing our bridging documents.
Mhm.
So, and then the delta that I think you're referring to, so we anticipate that the addition of plant ops into the Milvia project was an additional 25 million. We're already doing a lot of the earthwork. The next cheapest alternative was to rebuild Oregon and Russell, and if I recall, between the demolition, the abatement, the environmental issues, the underground creek, et cetera, if I recall, that number was, I believe, between 65 and $70 million. So there was a considerable difference. It wasn't a 5 or even a $10 million difference, which is still a considerable amount of money. It was more than 100% variable.
Right. So I think the question that I'm hearing from the community is a little bit about, like, what are the numbers behind that? And I know we've heard a lot of different dollar amounts, like how much it costs to do underground parking. You know, used to be $60,000 a parking spot. I heard from public comment today, it's now up to $80,000 a parking. And then we know that there's mass, and I'm building in my job, building health centers, and the escalation is phenomenal right now due to COVID, due to supply chain, due to et cetera. And so I think, you know, if there are ways for us to share any of those projections, I think that would be beneficial also from a board perspective. The other question, I thought I was like, oh, I'm scrolling. I'm actually looking at my slides. That I guess I do want to state that one of the ways when we look at Measure G, or any of the bonds that we do, is we have our marquee projects, and those are ones that our public really know and have weighed in on. The other projects are guides, and if I recall, when we were in that year, you know, the process of identifying priorities, that there were gallery walks and there was a lot of engagement at all of the schools.
Yeah, and you know what, I think I actually glanced over that, Julie, and I apologize. But in that early section, when the master planning consultant, it talks about when they were engaging the communities, there was just that. There was engagement meetings with staff, with community stakeholders, with the leadership for those schools. Facilities was involved in some. I came on in the very end of that. I know Shanita was involved. But then also, we also did like public meetings, like on a Saturday at the board meeting, come down, tell us, you know, we set up the entire district. So there was a lot of opportunity based on all of that, and based upon the funding of when we would do the issuances, as well as the needs. That's how the prioritization list came up, because it's number one, what's the absolute need, right? Where's the urgency? Understanding that. Understanding the funding and the time constraints, or the amount of time it'll take to do each project, but then considering it as part of each issuance, because our issuances are designed to be that we never exceed the, we're going back 3 years, but I think it was 170.52 per $100,000 of assessed value. So that plays into when we actually issue the next tranche of the bond. So I guess the point is, and just more for the public, we don't pass a $380 million bond and put $380 million in the bank that we can do all the construction at once. One, the district couldn't handle the fatigue of that, the construction, but two, we don't have that money right away.
Right. And so part of where I'm also thinking about where we're going with this is, while we have our marquee projects, we did do that site-by-site assessment a few years ago.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that we don't embed the list of all of the projects in the bond is because we do want the flexibility to be able to make decisions based on where needs are, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And the bond language is written just as that, for the fact that things happen. In 2019, we got the landslide deformation report that told us we needed to move Oxford. You know, in 2021, we got the report that says you really need to be out of plant ops. And I think it's important to mention that plant ops has been something that's been known. It was actually planned in Measure I, as I understand it. Shanita's shaking her head, long before I joined the district. And the decision was made to actually reallocate those dollars. And unfortunately, you know, it's something that we have to do. We constantly reallocate, but it's gotten to the point that we didn't have a choice but to act at this point.
So I'm not questioning reallocating for plant ops, but I know that there's a pot of money like for infrastructure. And what I'm hearing from some of the public comment for the last few months is issues around HVAC systems. And my understanding is HVAC systems, in some cases where it's big, might have its own line item, and it's also kind of embedded in our infrastructure costs. So I guess the question is, with the fire season and with COVID, if there might be a reason for us to actually do a more in-depth, I don't know what the right analysis is called, HVAC analysis, air quality analysis, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but to do kind of a check-in on our sites with a little different lens that we had 4 years ago. And again, based on whether things are different, either conditions are different or the status of the standard is now different. You know, we have the ability to make shifts if you know, expertise tells us that something is inadequate and therefore it needs to get bumped up. We've got the ability to do some of that analysis, right?
We do.
But I just want us to think about is we're not stuck. We're not stuck in this list. Not the marquee projects, but the other ones.
That is absolutely correct. And what I'd say is that, you know, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, for that matter, we were running, I believe, the equivalent of MERV 8, if I'm not mistaken. And every HVAC unit in the district now, with the onset of COVID, is actually running MERV 13. So whether the unit is old or the unit is new, that air is still traveling through a MERV 13 filter, right? To really filter out all the particulate, all of that is a concern. That being said, because there has been so much conversation around this, one of the things that we've actually been doing is we're actually looking for a lab that can come in and tell us, we can do air quality all day long, but what we're looking for is a lab that can actually come in and verify the MERV ratings. So in other words, when you think of a MERV 13 filter and the air passing through that, it tells you that you're getting MERV 13 air into the classroom or into that space. What we want to do is just to really kind of, because we're hearing the community concerns, is kind of verify that through independent lab testing. We just haven't been able to find one with that yet. It's not a normal lab that'll do that.
So we just did this in our health centers with HVAC consultants. I mean, we just did an analysis of all of our health centers.
Yeah.
So I'd like us to think about whether or not, you know, again, kind of talk with, you know, Dr. Stevens and the facilities and the, you know, different groups, but it's on our radar, I think, of whether or not we need to do whatever the appropriate analysis is.
No, and it's on facilities as well. It really is. I mean, it's not something that we've just kind of ignored or not thought about. We know that it's there, which is why we did the upgrades that we did to the HVAC systems throughout the district.
Thanks.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks, John. And yeah, I think I appreciated your questions, Julie, and those responses covered a fair amount of what I was gonna say and ask. I appreciate the people who came out and spoke and have emailed us, who I think represent important voices in the community. And just, I guess I just want to caution us when we talk about the community that, as you pointed out, Julie, and as you talked about, John, the prioritization of the bond projects was created after an extensive multi-year community process. So the community, of course, includes the communities at each of these schools and across the district who weighed in when we were going through the master planning process and came to the gallery tours and came to the different meetings. And for example, with the parking garage, identified that in the tennis courts is I think the highest, maybe the second highest priority at the high school.
That was actually the #1 priority at the high school. That meeting took place. I'm sorry, Ty, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
But that meeting took place right. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after I joined the district, and I remember going to that meeting, and I was shocked at the amount of urgency that was attached to that by that high school community.
Yeah, and a lot of it was about the impact on teaching and learning at the high school.
It was all of the conversations surrounded teaching and learning, and the fact that our staff there is going outside every hour or two to move their car, and it's a huge impact in the classroom.
The people who participated in those processes, not just with that project, but all of them, we don't necessarily hear from them because we heard from them already. And that's not to say that we might not hear from them or that we shouldn't hear from people who are engaging with us now. But I just, when I think about the community, it's of course, as we always know, the entire community. And there are probably a lot of people who have no idea that some of these questions have been raised. And I hope that we keep them in mind as well, which I know we are. And I think that the tool that you described or showed us briefly seems like a good tool to kind of let people understand what's going on, what the progress is, and where the dollars are coming from. And then, I just want to second what Julie said about, there is flexibility. It's to say that, we're talking about a lot of money. So even at the margins, that's a lot of money, the smaller projects. I do remember, the fire, it's not, the COVID is new, obviously. The fire season, the wildfires are not new. I mean, I remember we had extensive conversations about the wildfires back a couple of years ago when we were allocating, prioritizing the money. So I would be surprised if the science or standards have changed with respect to wildfires from when we made those decisions. But I appreciate, us looking into it in the way that, you and Julie were just talking about.
Yeah, and I would say that, like I said, when I came here, I believe it was MERV 8, it may have been MERV 9. And I sat down with maintenance and they shared a plan, and it was like a 4 or 5 year plan to try to upgrade to like a MERV 12. And it was really based on not only human capacity, but also dollars. But then when COVID hit, it was just the clear and right thing to do, which is why we brought that to the board as a district-wide air quality project, and just to get it done. So we made a huge jump up to MERV 13.
Okay, great. All right, well, Julie, any other questions on that?
Well, yeah, so not being an air quality expert, when we say MERV 13, is that considered the standard of where we should be with our HVAC systems in our schools?
Yeah,
Is that the standard?
Yeah, so what I would say is that pre-COVID, it was actually considerably higher than the standard, whereas throughout COVID, and I'll use COVID because that's the one that's freshest in our minds, right? But that was the CDPH standard. They were like, get your schools to MERV 13. And then in addition to that MERV 13, we also have standalone HEPA air purifiers that have either a MERV 18 or 19 rating in all of the classrooms as well. So we did a lot to actually, we didn't want to just come in at bar. We did as much as we could to bring it above bar.
Okay. Can I move us along? Is that all right? Okay. I just have I can go a little bit past 6, but not much past. I got to take someone somewhere.
I can't. I have a.
I'll get us done by 6.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks, John. Okay, moving on then. Number
Okay.
7, no, number 6, Sylvia Mendez.
Sylvia Mendez, right? So I just want to share with you schematic design so you guys understand where we're going with this project. This is going to board for approval. I can't remember which day. It might even, I don't think it's this board meeting. But as you know, we're in the schematic design process right now. And one of the things that has always been sort of thought about with this project, but never really got, I don't think, as much discussion as it needed, was really creating a true 3-strand school at Sylvia Mendez. So 3 of each grade. And that is part of this modernization. When we walk through Sylvia Mendez, one of the things that we notice, sorry, let me go back. One of the things that we notice is that, you know, all of the pullout services, whether it be RTI or OT or speech, it's happening in little cubbies. It's happening in elevator vestibules. I'm sorry to say, there's just not enough room in that school. So one of the first things that was identified by facilities as well as the design team is the need to actually do an addition at that school. This is actually, we've had several meetings in both English and Spanish with that school community, and it's been received really well because it's something that's definitely needed. So I apologize, I got my slides a little bit out of order, it looks like, but the aerial view of the addition is what you're seeing here. And then I'll jump us in and we can come back to this. But this section is what you're seeing would be the addition onto the building as new classrooms, as well as those spaces that are needed. Additionally, with this, we would actually be removing all of the portables. There are 2 large portables as well as some portable restrooms on the west end of that campus, and those will actually be going away and be replaced with brick and mortar. So what you see on the top of the screen there in those red dotted lines is the proposed addition onto the building. Let me rephrase, I'm sorry. What you see next to the red is the proposed addition. And let me see, I can't highlight, unfortunately, in the dark blue and the light blue. And then what we're looking at right now is just from a space capacity is, do we push that out a little bit further? It's actually all pushed out further is in the confines of the budget that's going to the board now. And we believe we need that room, but we are doing a little bit more exercises on that. And one of the reasons why is if we look at the orange spaces, which I believe are blown up there, those are the spaces that are sort of being set aside right now for a lot of the pullout services, the RTI, OT, speech. But what we also recognize is that they're really, really limited in size and the number of students that they can serve, as opposed to larger rooms or even a classroom that's perhaps split into 4. This new plan would allow us to do a SDC class at this school, which from an equity perspective, we don't have the room for an SDC class at our TWI school. So this is just a rework of the entry administration area. This is all, and a lot of this is very, I don't want to say boilerplate, but we always go over this, a very high level overview of the schematic design. But what we really wanted to inform the subcommittee today about is the fact that we are looking to do an addition onto this school, as was always considered, to actually make this a 3-strand school. Outside, we would be adding a lot of solar on the project, as well as enclosing a large area for outside of the cafeteria. But then that's an area that can also serve and is being designed to serve as an outdoor learning environment as well, outdoor classroom space. On the right side, you'll see there's actually some offices in the orange that are being put in for these additional services that are needed. And then here again, we're just showing right now as we originally planned the addition versus what we're thinking the addition may be, which is a little bit longer or a little sticks out a little bit further to the west, I believe that is. Again, we're showing that we're maintaining our path of travel in that yellow on the right-hand side, that yellow line. The entry point to the campus would still remain there. There would be a connecting bridge on the 2nd level so that it wouldn't feel like a standalone annex, but rather it would be part of the campus and then it would be attached as such. And then overall, this is the overall site plan of existing classrooms, the addition of the solar canopy, as well as that outdoor classroom, the new classroom buildings, hard courts, existing playgrounds, etc. This one here just shows primarily our path of travel around the campus. And that is it. Sorry, I don't know how my slides got out of order on that one. I apologize.
That's okay.
We should have
Julie-
ended with the renderings, but sorry about that.
That's okay. It's impressive. It's beautiful. Julie, do you have questions?
A quick question, is the entrance that is on Oregon Street, is that going to be closable? Or is
Yeah,
that
it's
open?
gates. Yes.
It's gates, okay.
Yeah, no, those are, and that's what it is now, is it's just a large gate that they open.
Right, okay. And then how long is the construction expected and what kind of disruption are we anticipating for the school year?
Yeah, so the construction as it stands now as a phased project would likely go 2 years because it has to be phased. We don't have enough room on the site to put enough portables to do the entire site at once. So we've been looking at alternatives, right? The original thought process when this project was conceptualized, probably in 2016, was that they would go to the Oxford site, or where Oxford is now, West Campus, and the circumstances don't allow that. So one of the things that we've been looking for is we've been working both to look at private schools or charter schools that are vacant, but also with Oakland Unified and some of our other neighbors to see if there's any vacant schools that we can rent that would suit our needs and move them off site for 1 year. And in that case, we would do it 1 year. It's a lot less interruption to teaching and learning. We're not doing the construction on an active school site. I've spoken with my colleague in Oakland, as well as several others of our communities. Right now, there's nothing that's close enough that actually meets our needs. Oakland is closing a number of schools. The years don't line up as far as timing, and the schools that they have, they're all on the other side of Oakland. That they've shared with me. They're at a great distance. So we're continuing to talk to our neighbors and to see what we can come up with, because the ideal solution would be to move them off site. Not only will the project be done quicker, but it would be considerably cheaper to do it that way, just because we're paying really 1 year of general overhead as opposed to 2 for the construction itself. But right now it's a 2-year project, Julie.
And when would that decision need to be made, if like a drop dead date on finding an alternative site?
It's relatively soon. It's probably, I don't have the schedule in front of me, I apologize, but I'm thinking it's probably 6 to 7 months. Prachi, you're working with the design team, and so I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't remember what our DD and SD deliverable, or DD and CD deliverables are. Do you remember where we are on that?
I'm pulling up the schedule right now.
And while you do that, Prachi, John, the community knows about this possibility of
Yes.
moving.
Yeah, we've had a few community meetings, and we've done our community meetings for Sylvia Mendez. I think I said this, but I'm not sure, in both English and Spanish.
But in terms of the moving, so if we can't find a place, we'll just do it with the kids there.
Yeah, it'll be phased. It'll be safe. It'll be cordoned off. As much of the earthwork and really the really loud demo work that can be done during the summers will, it's the goal of facilities, obviously, to do this with as little interruption to teaching and learning as possible. But the reality is schools are actively under construction everywhere at all times.
And go ahead, Prachi.
So DD will be complete at the end of August. August to December will be our construction documents, and we go into DSA in December.
Yeah, so really I would say it's that October, November timeframe, Julie. You asked about our drop dead date, because at that point we have to start making plans to bring portables on the campus, the few that we'll be able to fit out there, and then to phase the kids throughout the remainder of the school building.
So is the idea that construction would start in this upcoming school year? Like the second half, the second semester?
No, I believe it's slated to start in June of, I gotta count the years. Is it June of 24?
23.
20.
Okay. So to move, if you were going to relocate the school for a year, it'd be for 23, 24.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
You don't have to answer this now, but is the adult school a possibility for a year? Is that something you
I
thought
don't
about?
believe so.
Okay,
We have looked at it, but the reality is one, the adult school site will be under construction with the incorporation or the building of the workforce housing. Two, the adult school is really set up from a fixture perspective for the older kids at this point, and the adults. And then three, there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure needs that are needed at the adult school. It's something that we'll look at, and we've already talked about looking at it again, and then the problem also comes in of what do we do with adult ed at that point?
yeah, okay, all right, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I appreciate it, and we are thinking about it. They're great questions, but yeah, we don't have all the answers yet.
Okay, I mean, it seems like we probably, I mean, we need to both search high and low for a location and be prepared that they're going to be, the construction is going to happen when the kids are there.
Yeah,
It
and
seems like-
Oakland is our greatest possibility, and I talk to my colleague over there probably on a monthly basis right now, just seeing what's going on and everything else as far as what they have available, what's coming available. Because some of their sites that they're even closing, they're actually building out other things to operate at those sites.
Okay, all right, well, sorry that this is so rushed, but since we have a hard stop at 6, can we do the next item in 7 minutes?
Yeah, I could tell you that A, B, and C were already talked about. Those were actually shown on that highlighted sheet in the first presentation as what's upcoming.
Okay.
We're replacing the head end equipment at Malcolm. We're doing a little bit of an upgrade over at BHS, and then we're painting the Milvia. And then the other one that's coming up at the board, I'm sorry, painting Milvia, I said painting the media building. And then item D there, bridging architect, what that is for the implementation of the solar master plan. Since the board did approve those individual solar projects, we want to deliver those as design build. It'll be definitely the most cost efficient and the quickest way to deliver them. But in order to do a design build, we need bridging architects. So we'll be bringing HKIT, I believe, is our bridging architect that we've gone through the process. I'm getting the nods from Kelly and Prachi. We've gone through the process. We've determined HKIT, who we have a long-standing relationship, to be best suited for this project, and we're bringing their contract to the board.
That's great, and that was a high priority, both in the bond generally and early in the bond. At least that was my memory. That's my memory from those conversations. On the PA, real quick on the PA system at Berkeley High, I gather from talking to people at the high school that it's still not, I mean, I guess this is why we're doing something about it, but it's still not great.
No, actually, I've talked to Juan about it. They're actually very happy. But
Yeah.
one of the things that was identified and unknown was that when they actually, over the years, when they've modernized and things like that, there's some counseling space and some offices, about 30 rooms in total, that were identified just recently in the lockdown as actually not being able to hear anything because of the way that different modernizations have gotten done, where speakers have been removed or walls have been added, et cetera. So what this is basically adding speakers and then dedicated home runs for IP for Cat6 all the way back to our switches, our IDF rooms, so that
Okay.
they will have that. It's
Okay.
a safety issue.
But the problem that we had some people contact us
resolved.
about, that's resolved.
Yeah, according to Juan, and I check in with Juan regularly about this, Juan Regosa, there are no complaints at this point. Everybody's happy with the volume, the levels, and the fact that it is working everywhere. And what that was just, we're doing the same thing at Malcolm X, which we're replacing the head end, all the equipment at the front to be IP based, to actually eliminate all of the old analog wiring that's run and just eroded over the years.
Okay. Great. I'm no more of an expert on that stuff than the air quality stuff, but that's good because that was a huge problem at the high school. Okay. Any questions, Julie, on any of those things? No. I had a question, one more question about Sylvia Mendez, but I forgot it. Oh yeah, since we just have 2 more minutes, because there's nothing else on the agenda, I don't think. You mentioned that the community knows about the possibility of the move for the year. Was there any, was there any criticism or concern at all expressed about the plan? Like what are the biggest concerns that were raised?
Yeah, the biggest concerns that we heard, honestly, is that the community, I can't say the community, those who spoke in the meetings would much prefer to move to an offsite location during construction, but it is about availability, and we were very clear and transparent about that. You know, if we can find a space that's suitable, we'll absolutely move them. It's better for facilities, it's better for the school, it's better for the kids. I don't want to overcommit that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, thanks. Anybody have any last comments? All of you who are here, thank you so much for being here, and for all your work. Anybody have anything to say? Shanita, nothing from you? All right. Well, John, thank you so much. Julie, thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the few people who came out tonight and spoke in public comment. We really appreciate it. And we'll adjourn.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right,
you.
thank you very much.